I want to assume, with your kind permission, that you want the raw truth and not packaged responses to the questions you're going to ask here today.
We want very raw truths, very raw, because this is an in-house discussion that is actually meant to help the younger generation grow. So we want it as raw as possible.
Good. So the first thing I'm going to say to you is that PR is no longer the poor cousin of advertising. In fact, a couple of years ago, about 6 years ago, when we launched the PR As You Know It Is Dead campaign, we called it PR is Dead just for the shock factor. What we were going for was to sort of create some publicity for public relations. I dare say today that the decline of advertising has been to the benefit of public relations, you know. And at BHM, where I work, and each time I compare notes with my colleagues who run ad agencies, I can see clearly that that problem is no longer as bad as it was 4 or 5 years ago. Digital marketing also came, cut off from advertising, and he also threatened to pull the rug from the feet of PR. As I speak to you today, a lot of clients are cutting digital marketing budgets and trying to stop paid digital media and trying to use PR more. So I think that what we did as an organization was to try and provide more education to clients, to the media, to the public about the value that PR brings to the public. There's a gentleman called Efere Ozako, may God rest his soul. For many years, he popularized this phrase, waiting lawyers, they do self. So if we claim that PR is such an important strategic function, then the onus was on us to show it. And I think at BHM, with everything that we've done, with the work we do for our clients, with the research and reports that we invest in, with the kind of projects that we take on, we've been committed from day one that, okay, the likes of Quadrant and Co., the Quadrant company is the first private PR agency, as far as I'm concerned, in Nigeria. They may have started what we do today, but the burden is on the rest of us who have come now to also add value and show that, okay, as we make money from that practice, we also reinvest. So it's been like a walk in the park for me. I consider I was very successful compared to where the industry was a few years ago. And each time I speak with undergraduates now, and when I left school, if you studied mass comm, you mostly wanted to go and work in print, in broadcast, or in advertising. It wasn't fashionable to go and work in PR. And a few years ago, when interns come to, in fact, interns will come to intern in BHM. And when they graduate, they will come back to us and say, please, I want to work in Insight. Can you give me a note to them? Can you give me a note to DDB and Co? Okay. Today, almost everybody wants to work in PR. So it's still a long journey ahead. I won't stop. I won't rest until people actually have an option to work in oil and gas or in banking, and they say, no, that I want to work in PR. But I think we've come a long way from those days when it seemed as if, you know, it was men with four button suits and people who couldn't work elsewhere. And it may not be like that in the public sector yet, but I've been involved with NIPR at the Lagos State level, at the Abuja level also, and I know that a lot of things are changing. So I hope that provides some sort of intro to the answer to your question.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Ayeni. And just to remind everyone that this session is being recorded for our YouTube platform, just to keep you informed. So I'll move on to Mr. Toni Khan now. Please share your experience with us, especially how you started out, you know, into and journeyed into PR.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Yeah, we can hear you.
So I left school and came to Lagos, and I wanted to be a writer. But I realized that if you wanted to be a writer, you had to be a journalist or something. You know, so I already had a job from school with Hints, so I went to Hints to work with Hints, and I remember clearly my first PR job I did. It was for a woman on Kefi Street. She was doing weight loss program, and her company was called Slimmer You. I remember it clearly. And it's funny how this starts. So she wanted us to help her do some PR, and we went to see her one evening, and that's where the bug did, because it was like you know, I was earning this salary at Hints, and then suddenly somebody was paying me my salary for 2 months for one small job, you know, and that was like, okay, maybe this is where we should go. But on a serious note, when I left Hints, I went to work for Zenith Bank. And Zenith Bank, I was in corporate communications. Zenith Bank sent me to LBS for a course. It was called Managing the Corporate Affairs Function. It was very popular back in the day because most people who were in Corpcoms did that course. I'm sure Bolaji did that course. So it was a very popular course then for anybody trying to get into the industry. So that was where differentiation came for me. Like, okay, I can write. There's something called PR, something called communication, something called advertising. Coming to Lagos, I knew about advertising, I knew about the shops inside, but I had no real handle on what PR was. So after that course, like it kind of helped me define what it was I was better at. I like to call myself a writer because that's what I do. But I found out that using PR, I can, you know, advance my writing. So I would say my PR experience began formally from Zenith Bank, you know, because I was more in media relations and public relations. So we had the corporate relations big, but because I was quite, I mean, an adept writer, I was finally moved to research, and because of course, I mean, I had done quite well in my first and second degree, so it was an obvious thing to do. But once I got tired of banking and tried to head out, I knew PR would be the next thing to do. So I was the poor cousin. If we were the poor cousin, I can tell you that since COVID-19 hit, we become the richer cousin. Because
so PR is now oil and gas of marketing communications.
Yes. Who's advertising? I mean, advertising is Ayeni, maybe do a new one. I mean, advertising is dead. PR is alive. In the past 6-7 months, PR has been on the ascent. You know, we've been the ones who are getting jobs. The briefs for reputation management, crisis management has never been this many. You know, so almost every day somebody's getting his foot in his mouth and looking for help. So, and I think that with the coming of social media, the need for PR has become greater because the propensity to make mistakes has grown. And so the need to manage reputation and manage crisis has kind of come up. Then the second thing I would say is that there's been some kind of confluence between advertising and PR. So storytelling has kind of like, you know, evolved in a way that advertisers haven't really caught on. So you see a PR campaign and you're not quite sure where that line comes in. Because advertising was basically asking you to buy something, you know, PR is more subliminal. You know, it makes you think, it doesn't tell you immediately to buy it immediately, but it gives you an idea of that you didn't think about. When you see an advert, you know what it is. There's the advert, there's the call to action. But with PR, in the way it's evolved, is a bit different. And so I think that after this whole pandemic, advertisers may need to come and work for us. You know. Thank you.
But you didn't tell us what has sustained you throughout this period.
Oh, okay. So this period also since I started my business. Which one? This COVID-19 or before?
No. What has sustained you in PR since the days when you started till now? What's that one thing that has sustained you throughout?
So what I tell people who come to work for me or who come to, you know, seek advice is that you can't be in PR if you don't write. It is the key thing about PR. Yes, media relations is good. You can, you know, network and stuff, but you have to produce something. And that thing you produce is the biggest thing, and you have to be with words. So I think that my success, you know, in PR has, because I mean, I suck at networking. I suck at meeting people. I mean, I rather stay in my house and just stay where I am. So, but it's the fact that I can produce content that people are happy with and which produces results. That's one. And two, though I did not know what it was, but I kind of specialized quickly. And even when I pitch to clients, I'm always pitching to people who are looking to manage crisis or revamp reputation. So in that sense, because I know that the whole thing about the swag about media relations, which I can do, is not my advantage. My advantage is that I can listen to you and give you insights that can help change the situation. So I specialized quite early, and which is why this period has been very, very good for me and my business, because people remember that when I had this problem, this guy was there for us. And that has been very, very important for us. So I think that it's important for you, if you're going to PR, to decide where your strength lies. You may not be able to write the most, then get somebody who writes for you. Then lastly, what has helped me a lot is that also I partnered up quickly. I did not start my business alone. We were 4 at the beginning. 2 dropped out and 2 of us stayed on. So it's giving me that latitude to be a writer, to be a poet, to get a job if I want, travel and do what I want, because I have a partner who can hold the fort. So I think this is critical. Decide what you're good at, specialize in that part, and if you can get a partner, it's very important. Thank you.
Yeah. Interesting points there. Deliver value, specialize, and then partnership. So I'll move on to Mr. Bolaji Okusaga. You want to tell us your story and then what has sustained you throughout?
Well, I don't think I have much to say. A lot of the guys who spoke up before me are quite adept at what they do, and they probably have expressed a couple of things which are germane. My life has been basically around the arts, and trying to find a mercantilist basis which picks the bill. That was how I started into PR. It wasn't like something I woke up and if you asked me while I was in the university, all I wanted to be was be like someone like Wale Soyinka and just generally stay in the academia and do some work, But the realities of the time then dictated that, look, we needed to rethink the way you actually manifest, because you can manifest in different ways, even within the arts and all of that. So I got into PR purely by accident. I like to see myself as a serendipist. Serendipity refers to, stumbling on lucky finds. So I believe that I got lucky. I found something that I wasn't initially thinking of, but I loved doing it, once I found it. So I went on, did a couple of things, and then of course I ended up in a bank and in a communication role. And, at the time, people tended to think of us as those media guys. So when there is trouble, we'll call you in, just go and generally quench the fire. So you are like a fire brigade. You did not need to have so much intelligence. All that was required of you was a few media contacts there, here and there. And then once there is trouble, just go shoot it down and ensure that we are at peace again. And that was the way the bankers saw us. So staying in that environment, it was pretty intriguing for me, because what I then started to do was to push the ace and to show that, look, we're not actually as dumb as you think we are. If in any case, I think you guys are even dumber than us, because all you do is go chase money. There's nothing robust about the knowledge you acquire. So over time, when I had opportunity to do presentations at bank executive committee, and then the next thing was like, wow, I didn't know that you guys had this in you, and then they started to include me in committees that had to do with retail bank rollouts, that had to do with bank merger, and then you started to speak their own lingo and probably even speak it better. But then, and then Access Bank was again another very interesting environment with Ig and Herbert. There were 2 guys that knew where they were going and actually were bullish about it. We would do meetings from 1 a.m., from 6 a.m. in the morning. We closed at about 12 midnight, only to reassemble again at 6 a.m. The guys were in a hurry. They felt they had no time. And it was a learning space for me. But there was still something missing. I'm not a banker. I would never be one, because that's not my, that's not the propensity I have. my greatest propensity has been about, you know, writing, putting my thoughts on paper, you know, and just pushing, you know, the aces, you know, especially with the public. And so it was a strange environment, and I needed to do something new. And I got out of banking after I left Access Bank. I went to Eco Bank, and it was just like a factory for sleepers. I didn't really like the experience, and I was out in about a month. And then somehow, fate had it. Mr. Biodon Shobanjo, Jimmy Aushika, and then the Pololale then in Troika. They were looking for a replacement for the MD of Quadrant that was living at the time. And maybe I got lucky again. You know, they wanted something different. They wanted a younger guy who could hold the ace for a couple of years and do something new and rethink the entire process. And somehow they interviewed a lot of people. I don't know what happened. And then when I got in, they some sort of just like some of the things I was saying. And they said, okay, go try it, you know, and then let's see how it works, you know. And at the time, Quadrant, even though wasn't doing too pretty at the time, but had a big name. One needed to do a lot, you know, but the legacy and the name was already there. So, and we started doing some stuff. We got noticed, and we did that for over a decade, you know. And after a while, it was time to move on, you know, like everything in life, you know, you are basically in transition. So moved on, and I'm currently still doing that, you know, in my new capacity now in Precise. And we're even trying to do some other outstanding innovative things which will come to light very shortly. But as for PR being the poor cousin of advertising, well, it's an interesting thing, you know, that the way commercial PR, you know, on the practice side actually started, you know, outside of the earlier ones like Rod Publicity and a couple of the guys who didn't really do it in a full service version, you know, but did bits and fragments of it and went along niches, you know. It came through advertising, you know, and to that end, if you're an appendage of something, to become bigger than that thing, you've got to start to move yourself out of that environment, because you are always going to be seen as you are subservient or subsidiary to that thing that created you. So the likes of what Adekunle Ayeni they've done is to try and move the ace outside of, you know, operate outside of a non-advertising group to create some kind of basis that really champions the independence of professional PR practice outside of advertising group. And to that extent, you know, it's paid off, because PR is actually bigger than advertising. I was going to share a couple of slides, but I reckon that since these conversations are still on, I will show you how big it is. Advertising is a very small space and continues to shrink and shrink. The reality of today's communication has even made it shrink the more, because PR has never spoken in the first person pronoun. So PR has never said, I am. But that's what advertising does. Advertising speaks in the first person pronoun. So advertising says, I am. And in terms of believability, the world does not believe I am anymore. The world believes he is, she is, she's done that. Therefore, she is. PR, you know, and that's what PR has always done. So we just suddenly found ourselves in a global context where I am no longer sells. And to that extent, those who understand the nuances, the trends of the time, will profit, you know, from the current global context. Because, like I said, since the birth of the internet, advertising has been on the decline. Because the I am speak has suddenly gone out of fashion. All right. But the truth of the matter is that in the Nigerian context, it's taken so long for PR to actually emerge, because its foundation, its very essence, you know, really started from the advertising groups. So that's what I'll say for now.
Interesting insights. I can see that the banking industry has sure played a role in the PR industry in terms of building people as well. And so, I mean, that's something I never actually learned. So let's move on to what people actually think. You know how we say all lawyers are liars? I didn't say that. I mean, I've heard somebody say it, and I've heard a lot of people say it. So in the same way, people have the impression that PR professionals always try to bend issues to fit their principle. Have you ever had any experience where your principal asked you to say something that wasn't true, or where you had to bend issues, bend in quotes to fit what your principal wanted?
Who is that question directed at? Myself or any of the other guys on the panel? Unmute. You need to unmute, Agbons.
I'm sorry. I said the question is actually directed at three of you. I need to hear the different opinions since you've worked in the different industry and you've all had different clients. So it's just the same way if you ask a carpenter, lawyers are liars. His opinion is different from when you ask a market woman, all lawyers are liars. So I'd like to actually hear.
What you were talking about, what you were trying to talk about is whether we bend the truth.
Yes. Have you ever had any opportunity where your principal, your client?
Truth is a very controversial word. Adekunle, do you want to talk?
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Truth is a very controversial word. Do you understand? So when people talk about the truth to you may be different from the truth to me. All right? So truth is a very controversial word. So if somebody says, I'm telling you the truth, he's only telling you the truth pertaining to the way he sees it. So I'll give you the parable of the elephant and the blind man who saw the elephant. Some of them saw the elephant, by touching the body, and then they thought, it's a war. The other saw, touched the trunk and thought, it's a very hard form of substance. The other saw the leg, and so it's a bit round, and all of that. And of them were all telling the truth. Okay? So truth is a very interesting concept. It's a very controversial concept. However, facts, when they are put on the table to justify the truth, may begin to really address truth from a perspective. So in terms of when you work with your clients and certain things happen, but there are arguments for and against, all right? You try to tell the truth of your client. It has nothing to do with lying. All right? Some other guy working on the other side. I remember when I left Precise, when I left Quadrant and I set up Precise, the first client we had, was a Nigerian business that had a offshore holding company somewhere in the British Virgin Islands. And it was involved in the business of oil service and had several vessels, about over 100 vessels. But because of the nature of the Nigerian legal system, had chosen to register the ships in the jurisdiction of the British Virgin Islands, which is a tax haven, and with a holding office set up somewhere in Holland. Trading was still in Nigeria, the one that has business with the NNPCs and the major oil corporations. And some people were trying to move in to take that business because they had a bond, which they had done on the London Stock Exchange, and for which the bond issuers were people who were insiders, who were expatriates hired by the same business, who brought their friends to buy the bonds, and the guys were trying to take over the company. So on the other side, the argument was that these guys were defaulters. On our side, working against their interest, our argument was that there were internal conflicts. You couldn't go and bring your friend to buy my bond and then make me default because you had internal knowledge and you had structured a bond agreement to favor the bondholders so that if you defaulted for 3 months after paying well over $175 million down on a $575 million bond, and you had assets that could take care of the rest. And somebody then says, you have defaulted, so I take over all your assets, running into billions of dollars. Okay? So the other guys were international consultancies. They felt that they had the truth on their side. We were arguing from the basis of, ethics. Is it fair for you to bring your friends to buy a bond and then internally cause a default so that you can take over the company and assume all these assets. So you then use the fact that it was in a tax haven. You then did a suit in British Virgin Island and won the case, and then wanted to take over the Nigerian trading side. So of course we needed to argue, and the argument was that, look, you guys are all fraudsters. If the company went into liquidation, then you should have nothing to do with the new administrator company, if indeed you are clean. But if you surfaced administrators, it meant that you are the guys who caused the default, and that allow us to liquidate some assets to pay you back. Don't take over our business. And the argument went on until there was a settlement. You couldn't call that a lie, because from our part, we had our own facts. And the way we saw the truth was probably different, from the way the other guys saw the truth. So that is what PR does. You need to look at the context and try and find the truth in your client's situation. That's the only way, this work goes. And because if you lie, there will always be that trust deficit, which will make you not be believable. And if you are not believable, you will never win in the court of public opinion. So the court of public opinion is about weighing the two truths, so to speak, to determine which one is pertinent, in making their judgments. I don't know what happens in the court of law, but I reckon that also may hold sway.
Mr. Okusaga has successfully confused me and confiscated me. It's okay, I'll move on to Toni. Please share your thoughts with us on this issue. Have you ever had an opportunity, or have you ever had a case in point where your principal asked you to say something other than the truth?
So what happens is this, right? You get a brief, and then you have to basically interpret that brief for the people who want to consume it. And I think that's where the job of a PR strategist comes in, right? You and I have had occasion to work on briefs together, and I've said to you that this has happened. You can find a middle ground the way you put it out. Like Mr. Okusaga said, if you keep on lying, which is the easier thing to do, then there will be a trust deficit, because what happens is that you tell the media guy, okay, bros, see what happened, but off record, this is it, And by the time you do it, you become the off record man, because you have come again with this is off record thing. So I think that it's always for you to be creative in the way you interpret your client's brief. And secondly, never be scared to tell the client the consequences of what he's asking you to do. Once you have the ability to present a different side of the scenario, a different scenario for him to see, or for him or her to see, they will usually come back to you, because they come out to you with a lie. It happens every time when they come, but what I usually do is like, okay, okay, hold on. I know you're in trouble, but let's look at this. What happens if we do this, or if we do this? And most times, they will come back and say, okay, let's follow your own path. So for me, really, yes, I've received briefs which I knew were outright lies, but I did not put them out in the public.
Okay, I have one question here which actually is somehow related to these answers, or to this question I just asked. So somebody is asking, so is Trumpism of alternative facts a PR reality?
What?
Trumpism of alternative facts, is it a PR reality? Is it a PR reality? So I'd like Mr. Ayeni to answer that.
All right. Looking at what Bolaji, Okusaga, and Toni kind of said, I think they've used the brush, to touch everything. What I'd just like to add is that if we're being serious, there are no alternative facts. Facts are facts, and truth is truth. But I know that as a professional, whether you're a medical doctor, or you're an engineer, or you're a lawyer, or you're a communication professional, you have the liberty to toe whatever path you want to. But there are also a lot of case studies to show those who have done things appropriately and those who have done otherwise. I like to share the case study of Bell Pottinger, and I'd like everybody on this call to go and pick them up after the call and read about them. Bell Pottinger was one of the biggest independent PR companies in the world. We had the opportunity to collaborate with them on many projects during their lifetime, because at that time we shared a mutual client, which was InterSwitch. You know, they were based in the UK doing global PR for InterSwitch. We were doing PR for InterSwitch in Nigeria. But they were also working in South Africa. And to cut the long story short, they bent the truth in so many ways that it led to the collapse of the company. And it was a global disaster. And there are several, there's a gentleman called Max Clifford. He's dead now. He was the most popular publicist in the UK for almost 3-4 decades. You couldn't work in PR and not know who Max Clifford was. He ended in disaster. So I think that it depends on the kind of organization you are trying to build. It depends on the kind of clients that you are trying to work for. I started my career working in entertainment. Don't forget, I was a music journalist. My passion was music. Never in my life did I imagine I would work in corporate communications. I didn't even like, I thought it was boring. Toni Khan right here, thank God I didn't listen, tried to hire me to go and work in the bank. Osage Ogumbo, all the people who liked my writing did all they could to move me away from writing to go and work in the bank. They would say, send your CV. I ran from them. But you see, one of the core reasons why I realized I couldn't continue in that space was that there was no integrity. You can sit in a meeting with a client now and agree on something. 10 minutes later, they've done something else. So because of my personality and my vision for my company, I decided very early, by 2008 or 9, that we would only work for responsible organizations who took corporate governance very seriously and whose visions matched ours. And also organizations that had a lot to lose by not doing PR right. And he also made us realize that early on, we had to make sure that the senior leadership of our clients trust and respect us. Why that talk of PR being the poor cousin of advertising came was that a long time ago, PR people were kept reporting to managers. If you can't access the execs in a company, if you can't report to the C-suite, I'm sorry, you can't influence anything. But do they even trust you? Do they respect you enough? Bolaji spoke about understanding the subject matter. It is not enough to know. It's good to know how to write. It's good to know PR. But if you work for a telco, what do you know about telco? So I think that if we are able to build trust, I'll tell you guys a short story. I was friends with the wife of the MD of a brewing company that we were working for at the time, and we're quite well acquainted. And one day I was at the hotel trying to go to my car, and I ran into her by the poolside bar. She was with her husband, the MD of the company. We were now acquainted. He didn't know who I was. And she is very outgoing. The husband is very introverted. And she dragged me to come and sit down with them. And the man kept winking at her that, no. She insisted. So she dragged me and I sat down. So the man reluctantly started trying to make conversation, you know. And the first thing he asked me was, so how are we doing in the market? He didn't ask me about PR or media mention. He wanted to know how one particular beer brand was doing. By the time I left them that night, he was taking my phone and putting his number on my phone because I could hold a conversation with him about his business. We were not discussing PR, we were discussing SKUs and hectoliters and all of that, you know. So I think that if we can make the clients respect and trust us, it's easier for us to advise them and say, guy, I know that you are shy about this, but this is the way to go about this. You all follow the bank rape scandal, and you can see how much damage it's done to his reputation. But guess what? Ethiopian Airlines crashed. People died. But guys, the first image we saw, the first visuals we saw, the first things we saw was of their CEO on the site of the crash. So a lot of time when bad things happen, we want to hide and dodge. But that's often not the way to go. So there is no alternative fact, there is no option in communications as a broad practice than to be honest and to understand that integrity on the long run solves all the problems, that even if it seems that it does damage to you on the short term. That's my contribution.
Thank you. Interesting discourse there. And from what I picked, PR professionals need to understand the client's business. So it's not enough for you to be their mouthpiece. You also need to understand their business as well, so that you can actually even advise them further. So most times, seasoned marketers who have gone the whole 9 yards, they have meltdown stories of how things they've done that didn't work out well. I mean, it hasn't been all glory and all boom for you. What's that one experience that you can share with us of something that didn't work out well, and how what did you learn from that situation? So I'll start with Toni Khan and then move to Bolaji Okusaga before I come back to Ayeni.
All right, so it's not about meltdown stories. It's more about lessons you learn in the course of the business. So this is public, so I'll try and cover a few things, but just speak about it. So I had a client that I worked for a while.
We lost you there, or is it me?
Yeah, it seems to have
we lost him.
It was a big. Sorry, there's a call coming.
Sorry, we lost you. Okay, we lost you there for a while. Do you want to go back and start?
Yes. Yeah. So I was looking for this client, and at some point, I realized that it wasn't going well. And when I say it wasn't going well, it was that you bring up an idea, and they wouldn't accept it, or they would send it to another person to do for you. Some kind of funny things happening. But the biggest thing I try to do in my business is that every time I have a meeting with a client, I send you back a contact report. And basically, it's to highlight what we've said and the course of action I think we should take. And I think this is where the respect Ayeni was talking about comes from. That if a client says to you, do this, understand the nature of the business and the industry in which they operate, you now have the ability to say, scenario 1, 2, 3, this will happen to you if you do this. And by the time it happens the first, second time, they will come back to you and say, okay, you were right before, you're right again, maybe we'll pay more attention to you. But it comes from you having the insights that can provide that counsel. So this client was doing this, and it was a client that, we were making quite a lot of money from this client. And one morning I just said to my partner, we're going to drop this account. And she was like, why? I said, see, this has happened so and so times. And like a joke, I just told them, I was done. And till today, they're still asking us to come back and, and talk. But I said, no, it was done. So that would be my own meltdown story. In the sense that as a PR person, I try not to live anywhere, in anger, right? Or with bad blood. No matter what happens, if the client says to me today, we are done, the birthday or anniversary or Christmas, I will send a gift. It doesn't matter to say, okay, come, we're done, but there's no bad blood here. And ultimately they come back. So I think that for me, there's been nowhere I've worked where there was that meltdown story. But it was the fact that I could give up a very lucrative account because of, just issues that I thought were kind of going against what I believed in and how I thought I should be treated. And almost 2 years down the line, we're not dead. We're still here. The business is there. And every time I see the staff, they say, oh, we wish you would come back. But I say, once that person is still there, I won't come back. So that would be my own meltdown story, in that sense.
Interesting.
Yeah. You want to hear from me?
Yes, I want to hear from you.
I was going to just clarify a couple of things. I don't think that we exist in a profession that simplifies the truth. The truth is a very complex fact, so I need people to understand that. So ethics and governance are a product of human experiences. Do you understand? In every context, even where somebody had killed somebody, there is truth. You need to unearth it. That's what we do, all right? There are obvious cases where there are truths which are incontrovertible, but very, very slim. Because if I'm in competition with you and you do certain things, and the world perceives it as right because you have argued it as right, because there are facts that are not known. If I'm working on the opposite side and I have that fact, mine is to present that fact to try to show that your so-called truth is weak. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So when people talk about the Bell Pottinger issue, those are ethical issues. Those are ethical issues. If there's, I mean, it's like the Black Lives Matter. If you go now, say you are the PR business representing the policeman who sat on somebody's neck, that's very clear. You killed somebody in a very interesting way. You can't, but if we're in a corporate context, one bank is trying to take over the other and trying to justify its position. The other bank that is about to be taken over also has a position. And if he fails to advance that, the world will see the truth of the larger bank and fail to see your truth. So I'm just trying to tell you that truth is not a simple context. I'm working for clients the way I've done over the years. I've shown me that truth is very complex. Our job as PR professionals is to try and arrange the truth of our clients in such a way that it is stronger than the truth of the other side. That's our job. And whether it has a moral or an immoral basis, that's it. But if it then moves from amorality to immorality, that is where you draw the line, okay? But amorality speaks about indifference. Morality speaks about conventions that people hold, which in time, do you understand? A time was when people said being a gay was really, was not the in thing. All of a sudden, the West started pushing it as human rights. Today, it is taken as truth. So if you argue on the side of the LGBT community now, people will say, oh yeah, and it's a global media agenda. That is what PR does. So we mainstream the other side. The gay movement had to come out to say we want to mainstream our truth and hold our way. So I just wanted to explain that we're not a profession that simplifies truth. We operate in a very complex environment, and you must be smart enough to be able to defend the truth of your client. That's what we do. As for my very interesting story. The first thing with being put down and having a very, very funny situation, back to your question, was one of the first brief I got when I became MD of Quadrant, which was the Pfizer Trovan trial. If you remember the class action suit against Pfizer for killing people.
Sure, I remember that story.
Quote and unquote, there was a meningitis outbreak. There was a drug in trial. Pfizer brought in that drug to help. There were claims that rather than help, the drug killed people. It wasn't an established fact. So we then so Pfizer called us in to try and help because there was a case in a court. And once you have that case in a court, you would do from a PR perspective what you called litigations communication, which is that you want to try and present the truth of your client in the court of public opinion, because the judges themselves live in the court of public opinion. And we were working with these very interesting clients. I won't mention name, because, but she was this Harvard-trained person in Nigeria who was managing director of the Western Luxophone Africa for Pfizer at the time. And she just probably thought that we were there to take orders and that whatever she said was going to be upheld. And I was, a bit of a hot-headed person. Maybe now I would have been a bit, calmer dealing with her. And I felt that she was going to lead us on the wrong lane. So I persuaded, and each time I tried to talk, it felt like I was being brash. And then she started complaining. So what I did was then to say to the chairman of the group I worked for at the time that, look, I could no longer work with this because this client is heading for disaster. Not because they didn't have their own truths arranged, but they didn't know how to tell their truth. And that in that kind of a situation, she couldn't be pushing me to do what I considered wrong because it wasn't going to make any sense anyway. So we chose to resign. And I interestingly had a good chairman at the time who always felt like, if you needed to create an environment of excellence, you need to allow professionals to express themselves. And he said to me, even though I have filial relationship with this managing director, if you think the best thing to do at this time is to resign that business, please do. But if facts later come open that you are the one on the wrong side, then I'll fire you. And I said, no worries, you'll see what will happen. And not more than 3 months after we left the account, the managing director of the Pfizer Luxophone West Africa at the time, was fired by Pfizer in the US. All right, so there had been situations, and there are a couple of more situations where you find yourself in a very interesting situation and you will leave on principle. All right, you will try as much as possible. And interestingly, this other managing director then evolved with a private equity firm. And the first thing she said that she wanted to hire us to come and work with her. And I was like, oh, even though I walked away from your business, she said to me she loved the professionalism, and she loved the fact that we pushed back, that a lot of other people would have just agreed to what she wanted, and we became friends again. So that for me is
I love the angle of delivering value. And sadly these days, because we are so in a hurry to win the client and make the money, we let a lot of things slip by. Let's just go on with what the clients say, but in the long run it's never going to be the best position for your company. So I'll move on to Mr. Ayeni.
I'm trying to just make sure that if the previous speakers have addressed the questions to my satisfaction, I don't bother to speak on them so that we can take more questions. So I think from what Toni and Bolaji Okusaga have said, I don't think I have anything else to add. So we can just move on.
For this question, we actually want to hear a case study of the challenging client you had or a challenging business you had and what you learned from that situation. So this is actually very personal.
It won't be different. It's also on principle. That's where I think we should move on. Somebody captures it very, very well here. There's an Obina Ikwe on the call who says principles trump everything. If respect is no longer being served, leave the table. So if I share my experience, it will be a different narration, but it's compatible with what Bolaji Okusaga and what Toni. If you really want to build an organization that commands respect, that can stand the test of time, you must determine early on what is acceptable and what is not. We've resigned accounts, we've put our feet on the ground. We do it constantly. I'm okay. And even when we moved from doing entertainment to do corporate PR, I remember then that we jacked up our fees over 1,000%. We lost all our clients. And I warned my guys that don't worry, everybody will leave. But as long as we survive, they will come back one by one. So it's the same thing. Is this a hustle? Is this a side gig? Or are you trying to build a business? Are you trying to build a business that you can take public? Do you want to be in 21 countries? Or you just want to have a gig that can pay your kids' school fees? You must determine early on. I determined early on in my career that I wanted to build a business that will make Nigeria proud, that will make Nigerians proud. And I would rather do it the way I think it should be done and fail than just compromise. Up to now, I say to my guys all the time, what's the worst that will happen? They will fire us. We didn't set up this business to work for these clients. When I started doing my business, all the clients I work for now, I had no idea that they existed. In fact, we've worked for MTN Nigeria now for like 3 years. Never in my life would I have imagined that we will work for a client as big as MTN. MTN in their history have never had one PR agency. They've always had a PR agency for brand PR and corporate PR. It's the first time in their history that they will consolidate all their accounts with one. So what are you trying to do? Why are you doing it? What do you find acceptable? What don't you find acceptable? So I think it will guide the kind of, so even when we lose a pitch, our first pitch for MTN Nigeria, we stayed in my house. It was like a camping for 2 weeks. We went in like our life depended on it. We came third. DKK and Brooks and Blake won that pitch. My guys were devastated. And I said to them, guys, it's not our birthright. The client can choose who they want to give their business to. And guess what? We fought for almost 10 years to even get invited by MTN to a pitch. Now that we have been invited, let's count it as a victory. Guess what? The year before, we did all we could to get invited to the Etisalat pitch. We couldn't even get invited. Chain Reactions won that pitch. So guess what? When we lost that pitch, almost half of our staff went, of course, as you know how agencies are, almost half of our staff went on to work for the two agencies that won that pitch. 2 years down the line, an opportunity comes and we got the business. So it's the same thing. What are your principles? What do you stand for? What kind of culture are you trying to create? And what kind of company are you trying? I am interested in making the ecosystem better. I am interested in elevating PR from where I met it to a higher level. I won't be here forever. I want it to be said when I'm no longer here that, oh, wow, thank God that we had somebody like this. Plus, let me just say this as I round up. I did not have a kobo to invest in my business. My business cost 15,000 naira to register in 2006. I paid over 3 times with my wife's salary. Now, we grew our revenue between 2015 and 2019 over 1,000%. If you look at it in Nigeria times, we are very successful. If you look at it globally, we've not even started. And we try not to compare ourselves with PR. We try to benchmark. When we said 4 years ago, we want to start paying what our clients were paying, we're earning half what we're earning now. Our dream is to pay more than the banks and oil and gas guys pay and to go global. So if I didn't come in with a kobo and I've made something, I should be able to give back. But guess what? If the clients don't respect you, as Bolaji said, they are going to dish instructions to you. And at the end of the day, the clients won't do better. And someone also said it very, very well here about how if you don't help the client dies. When the client dies, you die. So you've made me talk. I didn't want to say anything.
I hope I have a job offer, with BHM. Please keep my space. I'm coming. Okay, I'll just take one more question and then I'll open the floor for everyone else to ask their question. And that question is, what's your advice for the young PR professionals? How can they distinguish themselves and reach the pinnacle of the PR profession? What's that one advice that you can give the young people who are coming up and coming? And then how do they distinguish themselves to reach the pinnacle of PR success? So I'll start with Toni Khan. I'll move to Ayeni and then come back to Bolaji.
Can you please repeat that?
I think you're muted. Okay, yeah.
Can you please repeat it again?
What's your advice for the up and coming PR professionals? How can they distinguish themselves and reach the pinnacle of PR success?
Okay, so I remember how I met Ayeni. He had written something in this day, or was it Font? And I reached out to him to say, oh, I liked what you wrote, and that's how we became friends. I say this to point out that everything about PR comes back to being able to craft a narrative, right? If you can't write, if you can't put it together, if you can't put thoughts together, if you can't bring insights together to influence thoughts or opinion or ideas, you are not doing anything in PR. That is key. So I think that you have to be able to listen. And when I say listen, I mean to the market, to the media, and social. What are people saying? You have to read widely. If I had met that brewery MD and had no idea what it was about, he would just look at me and say, oh, who is this guy who says he's doing PR? So you have to be able to listen. I've consulted for oil and gas, pharmaceuticals, where would I place GE now? Energy, I've done government, I've done consulting. And it comes from the fact that I'm able to understand the ecosystem, as it were. What is this business about? I've done telecoms and stuff. I've done banking. So everywhere I go to, every client I get or client I'm looking at, I immerse myself in that market, in that business. How does it work? Who are the leaders? Who are the upcomers? How will it look tomorrow? What is happening globally? So you have a composite view of that industry. You can't be doing PR and not know things. You have to know things. You have to be a sponge for knowledge. Very key. And then you have to be able to interpret your ideas and your thoughts into visible insights. No matter how well you write. I mean, a client called me, today is what? Today is Saturday, on Thursday, and said, oh, she sent me 5 bullet points and said they wanted a rejoinder. That was, she said a rejoinder. So I said, okay, what are you doing a rejoinder to? She said, no, something happened. I said, okay, so a rejoinder will mean that something happened. You want to say, this is not what, how it happened. It's okay, a statement. That's okay. So is this a statement for, it went on and on. So she didn't understand what she wanted, but she wanted something written. I said to her, so, I can write this in 10 minutes, but I need to know what I'm writing, so just go to show you what this work entails. So sometimes you don't, the client doesn't even know what they want. And if you don't know what questions to ask, you're going to give them what they don't want. And then it makes it all bad. So I think that to join the industry, you have to be able to write, you have to be able to read, you have to be a sponge for knowledge, you have to be able to interpret thoughts and insights and provide counsel. Bolaji mentioned something he called mitigation. I can't remember the term. It's mitigation of something. Mitigation.
Mitigation communications.
Communication. Yeah. So
mitigation communication. Yeah.
Which we call crisis management and stuff. So and I wanted to just talk about that in response to the question about truth and how it is bent or if it's not bent. So and you give an example of the police force in America. Can you hear me, please? Can you hear me?
Sure, we can hear you loud and clear. Yes, we can hear you.
So imagine if they gave you a brief from the police force and said, okay, so one of our officers knelt on the neck of this guy and he died. See, in this instance, there's no need to tell a lie. The whole world saw what happened, right? So what is your job as a PR agency? It is to now win over hearts and minds, right? It is to mitigate the effect of that action. And so fortunately, you will say, oh, this guy who did this thing should be fired, clearly see that you are not supporting this whole thing, right? People need to see people punished for wrongdoing. And that is where I think that PR misses it. So if a truck belonging to a big company kills somebody, right? We don't see the policeman, the driver, we don't see him arrested, we don't see him charged to court. People are going to bristle and be angry. So the first thing you do is get the management to get this guy punished or to be seen to be punished for what he has done. And then you calm people down. So you're not going to lie about what happened, but you're going to make sure that this story doesn't trend forever. This story changes tonality. So if it was, oh, this person's truck killed this person, it becomes truck killed somebody, right? You begin to remove the prominence from the story. So it's a process that in 2 weeks' time, the story is no longer on the front page. The name of the client is no longer mentioned. Are we saying we're lying? We're not lying, but I've been paid to manage this thing for this client. I'll begin to find a way to mitigate the effect of this action on the client going forward. So it's not a lie. There are lies you can't cover. But what is the job of the PR expert? It is not for you to make sure that the damage is as minimal as possible. Trucks will always kill people. Airplanes will always crash, right? So my biggest case study for this, in case anybody wants to check it out, is the Tylenol case study. It's a very big one on crisis management. So somebody went to the shops and began to put cyanide inside the Tylenol packs, and people died and stuff. And Tylenol did not try to cover it up. We don't know how it happened. They recalled all their stuff. But what did it lead to? It led to tamper-proof packaging for medicine. Before this thing happened, all medicine, you could open it and close it in a shop. They were not sealed, they were not tamper-proof. So you can see how from a business-destroying incident, Tylenol emerged stronger, became an industry leader, and disrupted the packaging industry. So these things happen. It was a PR agency who said, acknowledge, right, and then change the game. So if they had said, oh, it's not us, so it was from Aba, that one did not, we checked our badge, it wasn't our own. They're clearly lying. But you see, they acknowledged it and then they mitigated it. So I think that when we talk about changing the lying or bending the rule. It's not about lying. It's about mitigation. So I wanted to use, when you said that word, I remember that's what I was trying to think about. You can mitigate the effect of an action without having to lie about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Ayeni, what's the advice that you want to give to the up-and-coming PR professionals? How do you want to help them, or what's your advice to help them reach the pinnacle of the PR profession?
Okay, I'll try and make it brief. It's just to know the whys of what you're doing. The why for me, why I went into PR was that I was a journalist who was broke, and I didn't want to milk my subjects for money, and I didn't want to grow up and start begging Toni and Co for money. So I had no idea what PR was. If I lived in America, I most likely would live and die in the newsroom. So that was the why at that time. And I found something else. It was Kake Ogungwe. I've shared this story a lot. It was Kake who said to me, "You write well, you be a publicist." That was the first time in my life I heard the word publicist. But I'm also a keen reader. So I just went to go and study. So if journalism paid well in Nigeria, I will most likely still be in the newsroom. I don't even want to be an editor. I want to remain a reporter. So the why for me at that time was, I was young. I thought I was brilliant. I came from poverty. I didn't want to give you an idea of how broke I was. My first house that I rented was in Adekunle. The rent was 60,000 naira. And I had to take a loan from my office to pay my 6,000 naira rent. My pay was 10,000. This was not 25 years ago. Someone's mic is on. Is it possible to mute your mic?
Please, can we all have everyone mute their mics, please? Can we have everyone? Lanre, please mute your mic. Lanre, but something, yeah.
Yeah, I think
go ahead.
Sorry. So to give you an idea of how broke I was, this was about 2005 or so. My rent was 60K, and I couldn't afford to pay it. I had to take a loan. My monthly pay was 10,000 naira. So the why for me then was, what else can I do that will be ethical and professional and that can make me money? And once Keke saw that, Keke said, you can be a publicist and I will be your first client. Give me Two-Face, give me Santotan, give me all of them. Two-Face called me the next week. Come, oh boy, come, let's come now. Yeah, I can also give you more so you can do my stuff. That was the path for me. The why a few years later was, wait, I'm doing this thing so well, I can actually make it a big deal. The why for me now is that I am not playing a Nigeria game. I am playing a global game. So all the things we've done in the past 5 years, when we went to Deloitte to start handling our tax and audits, it wasn't because we wanted to squander money. It was because of what we were trying to build. So the kind of culture we've created is because of the why. The why for now is that globally, people talk about Black Lives Matter, and I like to contextualize it within Nigeria. I have been to almost all the important conferences on PR in the world. They don't care about us. We don't exist. If you check Bolaji Okusaga's books when he was at Quadrant, he is probably making the same or more than a lot of the agencies in Europe and America. Check Toni, check CMC Connect, check TPT, check MediaCraft, check Red Media. But guess what? Go and check Holmes Reports. We don't even exist. To get covered in global communications media is almost impossible. So there is huge. So we started Nigeria PR Report in 2015 because I had met Paul Holmes in Mauritius, where he was a speaker and I was also a speaker. I had met him at ECO. Nothing you could do to get them to understand that, guys, I don't want you to give me an Africa award for Africa. They do their awards now. They will do the global awards, then they will come to Africa and do a token award for us. I don't want that. I want to play mainstream. That was how we created Nigeria PR Report. And a couple of years ago, I told myself that I will no longer spend my money to go and attend these guys' conferences abroad. There was a day that Paul Holmes himself called me and they were trying to pitch for me to come and attend an event. And I said, who is the Nigerian speaker speaking here? Is your Okusaga there? No, who is Nigerian there? You want to take us out to America to tell us about how PR works in the US. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, my power just
we can hear you.
You want all of us to fly to the US to learn how PR works in the US. Well, how useful is that to us in Nigeria? We should also teach you guys how PR works in Africa. And I said to my guys that we need to get to a place where if it's in Manhattan, that the biggest PR agencies in the world are, we want to be there also. If it's in the London Stock Exchange, that you need to be, and that change, the why for me since 2015 has been, how do I build a company that does what everyone thought was impossible? GT Bank is doing it. Dangote is going to and I would rather fail I would rather attempt it and fail woefully. I don't mind. Guess what? When I started my PR career, everyone told me it was a stupid decision. Unlike Bolaji, who had worked in corporate comms, like Toni, I had never set foot in a PR company. I had no idea how PR was done. It was a stupid thing. People said to me, who is going to need your service? So I'm familiar with going into that space where it seems totally impossible. So what is your why? Like me, like, are you trying to escape poverty? Or are you looking at what BHM and Precise and Quadrant and Radit Adena and say, these guys don't even know what they are doing. I can do it better. So Abelo said to me, she became a photographer because each time she looked at pictures, she thought it could be done differently. So what is your why? Do you think you can come in here and kick our ass? Do you just want to make money? Or do you want to tell better? So if you can answer the question of why, it will determine whether you leave now and go and do an MBA and come back and start. Or if you take a free internship. There is a lady on this call called Adekunle who works with us, who came from a master's in the UK and came to us and asked for a job. And we say, I'm sorry, as at that time we are stopping interns. We can only give you an internship because you don't have experience. And it's going to be free. She worked 6 months for free, didn't earn a kobo. Today she's a lead consultant on the Nigerian breweries on our FMCG account, handling Coke and MB. The pay she earns is unbelievable. But she made a sacrifice. Our head of finance joined us at 70,000 naira. The day she shared that story, even I found it very inspiring. She took a pay cut same with Femi Falodun, who is the CEO for ID Africa. Let me use Femi's story. People here might know him. Femi left Zenith Bank. Femi just wanted to write. He left Zenith Bank, and I said to him, Oga, we can't pay you. You are a banker. He said he can take a pay cut. He took a pay cut. Okay. Femi is now the CEO of one of our fastest growing businesses. I'm sure his colleagues that he left at Zenith Bank will look at him now and be like, wow, they will still be at best in middle management. So Femi's why was he just wanted to work in a space where he thought he had the right skills. And I can go on and on. So if you can answer that why question, I swear to you, you are on your path towards what you want to do. Don't do it because Toni Khan is doing it, because they say there is money there, because it's the cool thing now. Ask yourself, look in the mirror and ask yourself why. If you answer that why, then you're good. I hope that answers your question.
Fantastic. That answers it very well. And, nice one. Okay, Mr. Okusaga. And then start preparing your questions. We'll take questions from 3 people. When it gets to the time, I'll ask you to unmute your microphone and ask your question. So immediately Mr. Okusaga drops his own points, we'll go back, we'll take the questions.
You see, for me, I take it that for us to really be successful, if you're looking at PR like it's a media game, or that you needed to be an ex-journalist or a corporate communications professional before you delve into the field, you probably are wrong. The context have changed. Communication is life itself right now. And so PR is like something that sits within life. When I encounter clients and they ask me, how come you know so much about our industry? I say, well, because you must just know about life. You must understand where the trends are going. Am I permitted to share a slide?
Yes, please, you are permitted. Go ahead. Yes, you can.
So you see, the truth of the matter is that it's a very technical field and it will continue to grow very technical. And the reason is this: if you don't understand the technicality, you end up bungling a whole lot of things. And that's why I said earlier on, I said, I'm not in this space to simplify truth. A lawyer that knows his onion will take on a murder case and win. That is how, you are trained to actually walk on the thin line between what is wrong and what is right. And to show to the world that sometimes what people perceive as wrong may actually be right. That's what you are trained to do. So that when you look at the context, you look at how bad that context may be in the ordinary sense of it, when people look at it, because the world sees through a prism. The prism is how we've been taught to look at things. So I'll give you the case of Trump. I don't particularly like the guy, but I remember that when he was running for president, I was in the US, and I was telling my wife at the time, I said, look, Obama has created a field, and it is on this field that this guy is running. And my wife was asking me, so what do you mean? I said, the first thing Obama did was to open all the liberal closets. So from gay to, you know, the whole idea of sharing toilets, no longer use male or female on toilet doors, to a lot of funny things. Obama opened those closets. So for people who felt like, you know, because the world is always on a divide, for people who felt, so I remember then that I just came out of a conference in Durham in Duke University, and I had some conservative guys on the faculty, and they were saying to me, look, Bolaji, this guy is killing America. This is Obama. That, look, why would he be opening all these closets and making brilliant arguments? Because he's a smart guy. Remember, he was a president in Harvard Law. To the extent that he draped the White House in the gay colors. Said, look, so what Trump readily did was to say, I know that the guys who are on the conservative side are already pissed off with this. And that whoever was going to become the next American president after Obama cannot campaign in the middle. He must also be an extremist on the other side. And he must seek to build a crowd on the other side. I'll tell you the way PR is. I'll show you a slide. So that the reason why I'm not talking about too much of the value side. Values are transitory things. What you hold to be true today, tomorrow may change because somebody else is pushing an agenda. That's what we do. And if you're able to clearly articulate that agenda, you bring that agenda on the global stage, the world will accept that that is the main thing. So I said, what Trump is doing today is to seek to open the closets of the conservatives, since Obama had opened the closets of the liberals. And that before you know it, KKK will start coming and saying, look, we have a narrative where we want to make it, no matter how abusive it is to the liberal mind. Some guys on the conservative side will buy it. And this guy will go on to become president on the grounds of opening that. And that if the Democrats had any option, the best candidate would have been Bernie Sanders. If you looked at it at the time, you will see that only two supporters were always in active conflict, Bernie Sanders supporters and Trump supporters. And that because Hillary didn't look real, because she didn't represent fully the liberal standpoints, because she was trying to make herself play the middle, you know, that kind of the middle candidate, she was going to lose to Trump. And my wife said, I'm not sure you know what you're saying. I said, you see what will happen. And lo and behold, that's what happened. So in life, I tell people, I'm going to leave you with this. What PR professionals do is to actually mirror life, look at life and say, I want to change the way some things happen. And truly be able to marshal that. What Trump is getting wrong now, I mean, we can talk on and on about it, is the fact that you can campaign from the middle, from the extreme, but you must try and rule from a bit of the middle, even if you are opening those closets. Because the guy has just opened all the conservative closets, trying to undo Obama's opening of the liberal closet. And that's what PR does. And he said to himself, look, I'm not going to use the mainstream media. If the mainstream media is playing the liberal game, they are not the place to use. So CNN and all the battles is about, look, we represent the liberal media and we will consistently push the truth from the liberal perspective. Unfortunately, Trump hasn't worked very well with Fox, all right? So he's been doing his own media on Twitter. He's not actually listening. Otherwise, he would have the persuasive argument again. And before you know, people on the conservative side, the evangelicals and co will say, that's the man, that's the man. So I'm going to share just a couple of slides, if you permit me, because I'm disabled actually.
Agbas, you need to make him a roast.
I have.
No, I'm disabled already. I'm disabled. Host disabled participant screen sharing, so it's not going to share.
Okay.
Do you want to look at it? So basically, I'm just trying to advise PR professionals. The impossible can be made possible. That's the kind of profession we are in. And if you see it as such, you need to broaden your knowledge. You need to know practically a lot about a lot of things. So today you talk about agric. I will get into the agric space.
You can share now.
If you talk about, okay, I'll just share a couple of things. Now, I'm trying to look at. Okay. I'm sure. I hope I'm sharing the right slide. No, I'm not sure that's the right slide. No. I'm coming.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just to announce that Mr. Lankpe Moile is with us as well. He's here with us. Joshua Ajayi was here earlier. I think he has signed out, but he was here earlier.
I'm just going to make a small argument. All right.
Okay.
The changing media landscape and the rise of PR. So that's the slide I'm going to share. So I'm going to say this. You see, the media landscape, because the word media means mediation. It comes from the word mediation. What mediation, and what that means is that the media mirrors life. And life does not operate on one, from one perspective alone. So if I tell you a story, from the African perspective, and I can mainstream the African story in the global stage, then the African story becomes an interesting story. So when people say that Africa is the poor cousin of the other continents of the world, it is true because we're not telling our story. Nothing is absolutely bad, all right? And nothing is absolutely good. If you look at the way the South Africans have told their story, they've told the story of a rainbow nation. They've told the story of the possibilities that there can be if people, all right, decide to come together, to create a great nation. But if you go to South Africa, you still see that there's a divide between blacks and the whites in terms of the reality from an economic perspective. The United States have told a story, using the movie industry, using arts and entertainment to try and mainstream the myth of America. So you find the likes of Captain America, Superman, and all of that. You see that deliberately they are draped in blue and red, the American colors. So they've told a story of heroism. And each time that story is told, they're always having the Chinese or the Russians play the
villain.
Antagonist. And then of course the principal or the protagonist is always the American who ends up winning at the end of the day. And that story had created and woven the myth of the greatness of America. So we exist in this, on the platform of storytelling, where we're trying to show to the world what is good about us, the truth that the world is not seeing about us. All right. So when you take on a client, that's the first thing you try to do. All right. So that I say this with a lot of responsibility, that the line between morality and immorality, not immorality, because morality is truly immorality. If you kill somebody, you've actually killed somebody, you've committed murder. And if there is no justification for that murder, if the justification for that murder is self-defense, because that person was also trying to take your life, then it moves from murder to manslaughter or homicide, or, and then you begin your argument from there. But if you've actually killed an innocent person who's done nothing, is either you pay the price or not. So in the world, the way you tell your story determines the way people position you. So if people see you as the wrong person because you're not telling the right story, that is what you get. So I'm not trying to bog it down to values or not. I'm just saying that you need to actually understand storytelling. You need to actually understand how to make the right arguments. Because if you work for clients, your clients will always have issues. I mean, I remember the MTN issue of SIM card registration and the 5 billion issue. And I always argued that, look, the truth of the matter was that MTN was caught in that trap, but every other telecom player was also culpable. So the fact that you caught MTN in the trap meant that, you needed a scapegoat. But if you were able to dig deep, you find that every other telecom guy did actually issue unregistered SIM at some point. And in fact, what is SIM registration anyway? It should have been done by government and not by the telcos. All right? But except you come out and tell that you're true, everybody will see you as the villain. What I'm saying is the media landscape is changing. Part of what the professional needs to realize is the fact that he needs to be innovative. He needs to look for points to earn respect for his principles. He needs to look for position to engender goodwill. So you see, today people talk about the whole idea of sustainability, and people talk about it underpinning businesses. It wasn't always the case. When businesses started in the early milieu, it was about us making money. So it was about business for business sake. So the whole idea of laissez-faire we exist in business and we can undercut competition so that we make money. Over time, people said, no, that's wrong. That's not the way to make money. Now for them to lessen the idea of what have we done? We are not actually, we're doing good, but we're actually, our impact on society is bad. Then they started getting into the philanthropy space. So the Fords, the MacArthur, the Rockefellers were the first set of entrepreneurs who played the laissez-faire capitalist game, but seeing that their impact on society was bad, they got into the philanthropy space. Then some other guys came and said, you know what? Philanthropy is not what we want. We want to tie things to some measure of reality so that when you report what you are doing as a corporate concern, all right, you don't come back to us to say we have done good and this is our bottom line, we're doing well in terms of profit. So they started talking about the triple bottom
Mr.
line.
Okusaga.
All right? Yeah. So I'm just saying that.
Sorry, Mr. Okusaga, because of time. Mr. Okusaga,
so
because of time.
Let me just round it up. So for you to thrive as a
because we need to take questions. This is already 6:36. Okay.
Just give me some few seconds. For you to thrive as a professional, you need to be a very creative person. You need to read extensively. You need to get involved in very interesting and so-called unrelated activities so that you understand the dynamics at play. Because you cannot do good PR if you don't understand life. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that brilliant submission. We'll just take 3 questions because of time, and please go straight to the point if you're asking your questions. Earlier on, Toka had a question. Toka, just unmute your microphone and ask your questions. And ask your question, please, and very straight to the point. SP Okpara also had a question. Immediately after Toka, SP Okpara will ask his question. Go ahead, please, Toka.
Okay, thank you very much. I would ask one of the questions. So it's for any of the speakers. So the issues around stereotypes, having that cultural sensitivity is very big right now, right? Brands, they put out communication without, thinking, about whether they're promoting a certain stereotype or not. And, a lot of consumers, give backlash, quote unquote, to the brands, right? I feel those brands would do better if they were listening to their PR agencies like BHM. So the question is, how can PR professionals protect the brands, the companies they are working with, from making such huge pitfalls? Thank you.
Okay, I think Mr. Ayeni should answer that quickly while SP Okpara gets ready for his question. Quickly, Mr. Ayeni, like 2 minutes.
It's pretty straightforward. You must be in a place where your clients trust you enough to listen to you. You must also be in a place where people in senior management, where you have access to actually, one of the worst things that can happen to you as an advisor is to be given advice that never gets to the board. So you are reporting to somebody who doesn't have clout or respect in the business, and they shut down your own ideas because they are even too afraid to go and present it to their own bosses. So you must be on top of your game, understanding PR and your client's industry, but you must also be in a place where you can at least have access to give your advice to those who are the decision makers in that business. Something I also advise people is the quality of your counsel should not be limited only to your organization. We have entered an age where people have roving consultants and all of that. If Toni can, I like Toni Khan's speech writing, and when it comes to books, almost everyone that comes to us saying they want to do books, I would like to say go to Toni Khan. So we have also entered an age, and I gave you guys the example earlier of Bell Pottinger that was in the UK, that was doing a lot of work through us here in Nigeria, and vice versa also. There's a company in South Africa now called Magna Carta that we collaborate a lot. So you may not even have that expertise in-house, but you have access to the right organizations or consultants who can come in and work with you in that space to let your client understand the kind of value that you bring to the table. And if you are in-house, because I also like to not approach PR only from consultancy perspective. If you are in-house and you work for an organization, you want to also make sure that you have access to the best agency, even if they are not retained by your company. but you have enough strong relationship with them to at least go to them for counsel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Okusaga, somebody is asking if we can have access to the slides. Is that possible? Your mic is muted. Mr. Okusaga, your microphone is muted. We can't hear you.
It's not impossible.
So is it possible?
It is very
I didn't get that. You said?
You'll get it.
Fantastic.
I'll send it.
Fantastic. Thank you. So
you guys will be able to.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. So SP Okpara, your question quickly.
Okay. Thank you very much for this interesting discourse. I just want to ask a question. The story of Africa has always been negative. Can we say that, and this has created the perception that African state is purely a continent, or Nigeria, a continent of poverty, and why the West, as it is a continent full of prosperity. Can we say, for one, that the PR is responsible, the state of PR within African continent is responsible for this negative image of Nigeria and Africa across the world? And secondly, I would like to know, can PR actually change the perception of Africa or Nigeria from the continent of poverty to the continent of prosperity? If possible, if yes, how? And if no, why?
This your question has grandfather, grandmother, and grandchildren.
Yeah, basically, can PR change the perception of Africa from a continent of poverty?
Let's leave it at that. Let's leave it at that. Can PR change the perception of Africa? Let Mr. Okusaga answer that.
Well, I'll say something. It's not a, PR is not a silver bullet in that sense. Because PR, the real definition of PR is about telling and doing and telling. It's a cyclical game. So if I tell and I tell and I tell and I don't do, then my arguments will fall flat. So if I say, oh, he's good, but he always does the wrong things. So what's the justification for that? All right? Mm-hmm. What Africa needs beyond storytelling is to find its strengths and develop its model. And after it has found its strength and has developed its own unique model, then it begins to tell its story. Right now, even if PR tries, what PR will be selling is the potential, because Africa is yet to manifest. So today, the Chinese have manifested. If all they had done were in the days when they had the crisis in Tiananmen Square in 1989 and the premier killed several people, they started telling the story of China respects human rights, and we can't find that. It's going to fall flat, because every argument you make must have some kind of visible facts that justify it. Africa's problem is beyond PR. While I accept that storytelling will help, because we need to change the perception, because there are obvious strengths on the table. We don't live on trees, all right? But Africa itself must find its strength and develop its model. Then storytelling becomes the third thing you need to do to change the way you perceive Africa. But if we don't do, and all we hope to do is tell, then we will be telling a very hollow story. That's my own conclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Okusaga. And
can I add to that?
Yes, please, quickly. Yes, please, quickly.
I want to beg to respectfully disagree with that. Often I have heard this point of telling African stories, and from the point of view how it's been framed, Bolaji Okusaga is right. People keep saying, African narrative to the world. I don't care about the world. I don't care about telling. So if you are telling African story to Europe and America, Bolaji Okusaga is right in my view. I don't care about the US is 324 to 326 million people. The whole of the US. Africa is like 1 billion people. Nigeria, quote any data. Nigeria is between 100 million and 300 million. You will choose somewhere in between. PR has a very, very fantastic role to play from the day you give birth to a Nigerian child or to an African child. What is a Nigerian dream? What is the African dream? Guy I was, and if I say this, don't think I'm a Christian and that I'm a good guy. Like, I don't go to church. But one of the few times that I've been in church, I have heard one of my favorite pastors, Sam Adeyemi, the Goodluck Jonathan was president of Nigeria then. And he says, I don't blame this guy. This guy is probably a victim. Now, from when you raise a child, from when you birth a child, you must raise them as if you are preparing them for the most important role on earth. You may think they will never become the CEO of GTB or CEO of Nigeria and they end up becoming CEO. So my thing about PR is that we have a perception problem. I didn't grow up knowing where my country was going to and what was important to my country, or I am Yoruba, or what was important. The people who end up in leadership, how did we, and PR shapes your mindset. People think corruption is okay. Now, the young kids who are growing up now, what is their inspiration? Who are their role models? Who do they want to be like? So if we truly want Nigerians or Africans to believe in the continent and the country, to work towards making it better, as Bolaji has said, so that we can have something to show the world, we first have to teach them. I have been saying that we need to start teaching communications to kids from primary school. So from church to schools, and the society needs to understand that, wait, who are we trying? This thing that Bolaji Okusaga has said, what did China do to transfer them? What did Singapore do? What did the US do? The British colonized the Americans. How did America become God's own country, quote and unquote? So I think first, the work should start from home. We need to change the perception. That's one. Two, we need to train our kids to understand what we are even trying, because I think Africa is a very poor continent. Nigeria is a very poor country. What should I, if I was born today, what are the things you are putting in my head, almost brainwashing me to believe as I'm growing up that this is my role to change this country? So people join Nigeria's police force thinking that they are going there to go and make money. People join politics now as employment. So PR is such a profound practice that he has a very invaluable role to play in national orientation and continental orientation. And if we do that right, we suddenly find ourselves in a space where we are solving the right problems, we are advancing the right causes. Then we get to a point where Bolaji will be proud enough to tell the Americans and the Europeans that, guys, no, watch out for us in the next 20 years, we'll be the leader in AI. But as it is like anywhere belle face. The kids just believe that the African dream is to get rich by hook or by crook, you know. So that's my addition to Bolaji's submission.
Thank you very much. I'll just take one last question for Mr. Toni Khan, and that question is from Obina Ikbe. Quickly unmute your microphone and ask your question so Mr. Toni Khan can take it, and then we'll close for today. Obina, are you still here?
Yes. The question was actually for Mr. Ayeni. You said I should ask,
but we're moving it to Mr. Toni Khan because Mr. Ayeni has already made his comment here.
Okay. Mr. Toni Khan, what would you say in your career has been your biggest blunder, and how did you manage the situation?
I thought that question had been asked earlier by Agbons. So why are we asking that again?
My biggest blunder.
Of course, yeah.
Are we asking
I actually asked that question earlier, but you can speak to that and just give your closing remarks so that we can, you know.
Okay, I don't commit blunders, so that's my answer. If I did, I would have my business been dead by now. I don't know to commit blunders. I don't commit blunders, so I have no answer for that. So to just close, I hear people saying, 1 minute, please. Yeah, I hear people saying the world, you know, Africa to the world. There's no world. There is no world. It's just, there's no Africa, there's no world. Every morning I receive a briefing from CNN, good morning from CNN, and it's telling me about American cities and stuff. The whole world is now in my phone, right? So I think that we have to learn that. To just, my parting shot is this. If you're going to be successful in PR, you have to learn to anticipate. That is the word you must keep in mind. Anticipate. Anticipate trends, anticipate issues, anticipate crises, anticipate problems. Don't let it catch you unawares. Because once you anticipate those things, then you are better placed to handle them. So I forgot to add that when I said what you need to do to be a good, to function well in PR. Then finally, I mean, there are people, Ayeni set out on a crusade, you know, to kind of change the PR practice and, you know, do great things, you know, in that regard. And it is a very noble endeavor. But you are not Ayeni, you are not Toni Khan. You have to decide and define what your strengths are and what you can do for the practice. So, like I said before, if you want to specialize early, specialize early. You know, we decided, I mean, Ayeni told me once in my house that, oh, see, I haven't worked in any big place or earned so much money, so whatever I earn is an improvement on where I came from. But for somebody like Bolaji, who was CEO of Quadrant, or myself, who I've worked, I mean, as an AGM in an organization, so my bar is a bit higher, and my own interest is not so altruistic as Ayeni's own. I'm not trying to change any industry. I'm trying to define my business and keep it sustainable and make it work. So what is your why? Like you said, what is your why? What is driving you? So don't come in and say, oh, okay, I want to change industry. I want to do the Africa report or whatever. No. First of, I mean, Bolaji talk about sustainability and CSR. There's a quote, I think it's by Friedman. He said, the CSR of a business is to make money. Because a business that is not making money cannot do CSR. Yeah? So no matter how much of a Christian you are, of a good intentional person you are, if your business is suffering, you can't make any change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we won't be able to take any more questions as we have run out of time. This is 6:52 and we don't want to exceed the 7 p.m. Short. I know that there are still some questions, but please pardon us. You can actually send those questions to the faculty group and we can, you know, I think Mr. Bolaji Okusaga is in the brief faculty group. Toni Khan is there. Mr. Ayeni is not there, but he can join us. So if you put your questions there, you get answers to them. And if you're looking to join the brief faculty, I've just dropped the link on the chat pane, so you can just click the link and join the group directly. Lanre Basamta will give us our closing remarks and our thank yous before we close.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Agmos. I mean, first and first, I think your last comment is really going to be helpful. There's a particularly interesting question from Langbe, and would appreciate if either of our panelists today can just, I mean, particularly for the two in the room, would appreciate if they can help just address that when we go to the WhatsApp group. I mean, it's a good time to really appreciate the three of you, sirs, Mr. Okusaga, Mr. Ayeni, and Toni Khan himself. I'm not sure I've heard a lot of people call him Mr. Toni Khan. It's just Toni Khan. We really appreciate you finding the time to share with us out of your wisdom and experiences. There's a lot that our industry needs. There's even a lot more that our country and our people need that PR can help with. We really appreciate some of the perspectives you've shared. I think the way we see Africa and our practice is as an ongoing concern. We might not really be the ultimate solution to our problems, but some of your ideas and some of the ideas we will be able to share would be the light on the path for some in our times and maybe those coming behind us to help us solve the problems. So thank you again for finding the time, for sharing with us some of your ideas, and more importantly, for your commitment and contributions to our practice. We really do appreciate, and our hope is that when we call you next time, you also find the time to join us. And for everyone who's joined, thank you so very much. Like Agbons always say, there's going to be a recording that we'll be able to share with you if you want to catch up or to share with others who were not able to join. But thank you, and look forward to seeing you all in August. There's another bumper package being planned for that. Thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. There's a bumper package coming in August. You don't want to miss that. So thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.